Is it true that hardcore bodybuilding is dying? This
It's just nonsense. And
the way people used to train this.
I remember, this will be embarrassing.
What do you think? Is there a psychological dependence on steroids? Of course.
Of course,
Stretching between sets, what are your thoughts? Not,
you don't need to test your body for its endurance.
what's your opinion on women using pharmacology? Disgusting. Hello friends. Today our guest is Alexander Fedorov, a man with the biggest arms in our competitive bodybuilding, a star of Russian bodybuilding, and the first person from our country to compete in the Mr. Olympia contest. Sasha, hello.
Hi Sanya, thanks for inviting me. As I understand, today we'll discuss a lot of interesting topics and there will be many questions.
Yes, a lot.
I'll answer as much as I can and see how it goes.
Is it true that hardcore bodybuilding is dying?
Recently, I dislike hearing certain phrases during training. Finish off the triceps, you have to kill yourself during the workout, that's what's dying? No, I'll say it a bit differently. It becomes less spectacular, so it gives the impression that it becomes less interesting. That's why people say it's dying, it's a trend, yes, and it does exist.
You know, back in my childhood, I really wanted to be like Arnold. Well, because he's a handsome, athletic guy, and walking on the beach, you watch a video and people look at him like he's some kind of fairy tale character and everyone wants to be like him. Looking at the lineup, everyone competing with him was really good looking. But now if you look, one is crooked, another is cross-eyed. I have a second question for you and it comes from the first one. So I'm looking at the lineup from the 2000s, there's 95, 2005, and if you take the 10, basically, it's a matter of taste. Yeah, they're all beautiful and consistent. You now...
What level are we talking about? Let's clarify right away.
Performance level? No.
There is a performance level. Yes, there are championships in St. Petersburg, Moscow and Russia, including the World Championship and Mr. Olympia.
Olympia?
Sure, Mr. Olympia. Those tournaments were actually quite interesting in those years. And there were concepts like being a standard, yes, like a benchmark, some kind of values. Well, the leader was a leader, yes, meaning he had to be just that much kind of...
Like that, a diamond.
A diamond, yes, precise. That really was the case, I agree with that. And then if we look at it, each one stood out in their own way. So what you're talking about, the top 10, each one was a personality, each one was popular for something. For example, first place had one quality, but second place stood up with something else, like charisma. For example, Schleckamp and Volk. He was the big white guy with a notable smile at that level and the only one to ever beat Ronnie Coleman once. It was like when he was a professional, among professionals, he was the only one who didn't win at some commercial tournament, not at the Olympia, but at a commercial one. So everyone had their own story. Some were smaller, like Lepris, for example. Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, at that time he was famous for being small, but his biceps peak looked just amazing. Phenomenal. Yeah, that's true. That was the case back then. I agree. The top 10 were guys you wanted to see, not just the top, like number one, but you wanted to see all of them. They're free programs. They would surprise you with something. Something was always happening.
But what has changed?
What has changed is that, first of all, this era is moving away from the Renaissance. Still, I think, right now the Vader brothers must be turning over, judging by what's happening now. They split the federations. First is the Gaming Federation. And what is that? I mean, the European Federation, NBS, and now PRULIK. But this is already a split that brings negative consequences. And any negative story, just like in medicine I noticed, any negativity sows disease. Now we are witnessing this disease.
Why does everyone say people used to be pushed to this before? There now appear to be more medications and resources. Maybe now people just focus more on things other than hardcore training and strict routines.
You got it exactly right. Now, if you pay attention, let's figure it out this way. After all, since you're someone who knows the topic, it's easier for me to talk to you. What do you think built-up muscles are?
These are muscles you've built and trained over time.
Trained?
That's right. You can even see them. They even look defined. And
injected.
Yes.
You see, nowadays everyone is betting big on pharmacology and instant gains. I mean, roughly speaking, this was mostly observed in America. Pay attention to athletes who compete at a professional level and how quickly they decline once they leave the competitive scene. That's what's really striking, isn't it? It's like a muscle buffer, right? So you build them up and then lose them, build them up and then lose them, but the muscles themselves remain undeveloped, and that's the point we're talking about today. It became increasingly common in the traditional field. People focused more on chemicals and put less effort into the actual work. Exactly. It's about focused, intense training with real effort. Nick?
Volker, the one with that huge varicose vein on his leg, he competes at the Olympia. Right now, I think he took second place at the Olympia, even though he's not very tall. Why am I using him as an example? He's just over 20, like 20 something. I mean, before to take first or second place at the Olympia at 20 years old in your debut, you just physically couldn't develop the quality of muscles you need to place at that age.
Sanechka, you know what I'm thinking about right now? My dad always used to say, Sasha, a bad horse takes off fast from the start. So today, let's put it this way. What are we fighting for right now? We're fighting for, is it about getting preferences, dividends, breaking records quickly, or how soon you'll reach or win the Olympia? Or are we going to fight for longevity, for healthy longevity? Personally, I'm more for healthy longevity. But how exactly does this effect happen? Well, you understand as a doctor, you know that this is a questionable story in terms of future life prospects and future health, right?
That's me. This is probably confirmation of your theory that nowadays a lot is determined by the amount of drugs, not by training. Because back then, people definitely trained more actively than they do now. Here,
let me open this moment now, like you. I was curious myself, and today, at 45 years old, what do you think my testosterone level is, given my hand measures 53 when cold and 56 when hot? What is the normal testosterone level?
Listen, well, come on.
Just for this doesn't commit to anything, so come on, just approximately. So we're talking about pharmacology, probably. If there is one, then that's the reference value. People understand what we're talking about right now. Well, approximately.
Well, on hormone replacement therapy, in your situation, if you're training, there should be numbers. Well, I think if we're talking health, I definitely wouldn't want your levels above the reference range.
Well, what do you think?
Well, 35?
Well, you guessed it. Look, this was submitted just 2 days ago. You can read it out.
3176.
Yes. So this means it says that there is pharmacology in my blood.
Hormone replacement therapy, basically?
No, there isn't. Almost none. So just so you understand, this is just how I support my body's vital functions, Thanks to this, I can still train with the guys and handle our training. I've built this up over the years, but hardly anyone believes it now.
You didn't quit and fall apart right away. Things fall apart gradually.
You know why? Because that's a good thing. I'm glad I came to see you. Many guys will probably hear this. And in this situation, even if you don't agree with it, and we can actually continue to develop this story further right now. Now, when my whole story started with taking medicine and drugs, it was always like that. I was coached by my father. That's what follows. He said that training should never change, especially in terms of mindset. Yes, they change. Pharmacology lets you lift more and feel less fatigue, but you still go by how you feel. So you see, if the ligaments get a bit weaker, we just reduce the load because the ligaments can't handle it. But it doesn't mean that if there's no gear, I don't train. That's why the goal was pharmacology. Start, gain 10, then stop. Because there were competitions twice a year, the season, and the cycles also lasted for me twice a year. All the rest of the time was without them. And so when I gained 10 without them, 4 should stay. I gained 10, 4 should stay. In a year, 8. Well, I'm speaking figuratively, maybe 3 or 2, but something definitely has to stay. That is, you have to work for it. You got extra fuel, you got an extra resource, you have to work for it. Not just because you have gear today and feel pumped, but deflate when you don't. There's always a process of working for it. And today, when you work for it, your body reacts completely differently. It still remembers you must work hard and make your own hormones. When we keep getting outside connections, you can probably explain better what happens then.
Well, nothing
good. It's like in life, if a person is just given money and doesn't need to work, sooner or later, he starts to degrade. After that, yes, degradation, he becomes deluded, partying, drinking, and eventually life teaches him a lesson. It's exactly the same with the body. So you shouldn't forget that, yes, pharmacology is a good resource. It's a good product to boost metabolic processes, to help everything progress. But remember, the body must also do some work.
Sasha, when I was, let's say, younger, probably in my first or second year, I used to go to the gym, and the trainers there were really big guys, and I used to look at them. I used to think they just took injections, walked on treadmills, and grew easily anyway. And sometimes patients come to me and say, I want to go on hormone replacement therapy. I have low testosterone. My main concern is not becoming like that. You know, when people show photos saying they don't want to end up that way, I tell them they couldn't even if they tried. People sometimes ask me to help with their first cycle. I haven't prescribed in about 4 years, though I used to. And I was always surprised by people's expectations from a cycle. I mean, they really thought that in just 3 months they could get an amazing, some kind of competition-ready physique. I said, well, let's see, let's try. It really sobered them up when they busted their asses. When they were also injecting her with testosterone, taking anabolic steroids, growth hormone at the same time, and only got about a tenth of what they expected. After that, they started to treat competing athletes and bodybuilders very differently, because only a fool would say that chemistry decides everything. Chemistry. So here's a question for you. What percentage of a champion's medal is due to chemistry?
Simple. Look, pharmacology, well, kind of. On one hand, it's a banned thing, but it's available. You can get it online or buy it anywhere if you want. There are a lot of people who want to get in top competitive shape, gain mass, but for some reason, there are only a few champions. So what percentage is that?
And they remain year after year.
The same. And moreover, you understand that, as you correctly noted, degradation begins. That is, we don't have the charisma of a leader. The charisma of a leader takes a back seat. That's our situation. Bodybuilding is probably the most selfish sport. You eat for yourself, dress for yourself, and expect everyone to notice you just because you look good. But as for this life story about actually living, unfortunately, bodybuilding doesn't teach that. That's why if you lack your own spiritual development, a person will still start to degrade sooner or later, and it won't last long for him.
Tell me, here's a direct question. If you compare the 90s and now, how much have the competition doses changed?
I can't speak for others, but thanks for asking. When Vishnevsky and I were winning in Europe, I had 1,700. Later, when I was competing, it was 2,200. If we're talking in milligrams, that's what I had. Yeah, again, I can't say for others. That's the maximum. And, you know, when it was 2,200, well, it just wasn't worth it. My body reacts differently. You can see from my result today, I just don't need that much. It's all individual, receptors, reactions, it's all individual. We're people, not robots. Everybody is unique. Today, I'm really stressing this. It's all about the mentor, coach, or doctor's approach. You get it, right? You. When you take on a patient, there's a certain initial template, but that template always has branches. And that's right. There could be an allergic reaction or something else, so you need to make adjustments, right? It's the same for people. Everything works that way. So you always have to understand which medication is being used. It always has to be a small, careful step. And the more a person gives into sensations and feelings, the more chances he has to achieve better results. If that's not there, if he just blindly trusts. Like someone told me, you know how people come and say, someone told me, so I do it. I say, do you even understand what you're doing yourself? Have you started to believe in what you're doing? If someone does something without believing in it, their results are much lower, possibly even zero, compared to someone who truly believes in what they're doing. It's like a patient, right? If he believes that he will recover much faster and, roughly speaking, cause less trouble for his doctor, right?
Yes, Sash, question. I'm watching the video Old Retro, and I see that back then machines took up much less space in training. That is, people preferred barbells, they liked bent over rows. In other words, they liked free weights, like in Arnold's era. Now, though, even many pros mainly use machines for some reason. That is, they've shifted more towards the pump, you could say.
Well, Sanechka, first of all, it's business. You see, machines are business, advertising machines. Machines need to be sold. It all revolves around that. In reality, it's not the machines that make the difference. I mean, you see, well, like Schwarzenegger grew up after all.
On
Barbells, dumbbells, 2 pulleys, 3 steps, nothing special, no hooks. And moreover, I'll tell you this, today's trendy machines for me, if they have any kind of friction, for example, or if they're uncomfortable in any way, they're completely useless to me. So basically, I like to be the one dancing, not the one being danced around. But if you get on a machine that sets the trajectory for you and you can't adjust it to your own physiology, is that machine really useful? That's why I prefer to choose machines that allow for a lot of variation, or it should have a lot of settings, but in no case should it restrict the movement and mobility of my body or the body of the person I'm training.
The guys see your huge arms and know you have a lot of experience. Yeah. Although, sometimes we have a guy who just doesn't work out, doesn't train. That doesn't mean he doesn't know. Maybe he quit bodybuilding 10 years ago, for example. But the bigger the arm, the more authority there is in the words of the person who says how things should be done.
Well, again, if you want to find someone to listen to, just look into what kind of background he has. I mean, it could be a coach, but a coach should have trained someone, or for example, a person should have achieved something. Yes, in my case, if we're discussing the arm, it was built that way.
Very much. So give some advice. How do you build it up?
My dad had the biggest arm. I remember he could barely curl 50. Dad competed in 87. That's where it all started. That's it. So when we made the decision that I would do it, the first goal was to become a junior world champion. So I started training, and my dad would often measure his hand. Every evening I saw him with a measuring tape squeezing out centimeters and millimeters. When his hand finally reached 50, I heard it. His mood would really lift. Of course, it's not just about what is said, but what you see in these moments. A child is raised not by words, but by the visual perception of their parents. Right, and of course, I saw how he measured his hand, and then I walked with him down the street. And especially in the summer, when Armenian guys would come with fruit, we always had the best fruit because everyone respected him. Back then, everything was still kind of new. Of course, it made a big impression on me. Plus, Schwarzenegger, his arm, 56. People talked a lot about his arm, and that's how it all began. The bodybuilding is like really about bicep size. Remember Schwarzenegger? Yeah, well, beautiful biceps. Yeah, well, although there was no triceps. If you think about it, there are hardly any photos where he shows it. You usually just see his biceps. Still, everything was built on that. My first movie was Commando. Remember, it's twins. His shirt tears when he sits. All these moments, they layer onto your subconscious. If you use all these motivational things correctly and set the right pace for yourself, back then, let me tell you, there was blood sport from those 90s movies. Remember when it all started with that one? There was a lot of motivation and substance there. For example, I grew up watching Rocky. So if a boxer watches the movie Rocky, he'll say, well, it's complete nonsense. Yeah, but you shouldn't focus on how the techniques were done, but rather on the inner message of the person involved. That is, the movie is valued not for the choreography of the punches, but for its inner energy. And basically, for me, Rocky 3 and Rocky 4 are like my go-to movies. Every morning when I have breakfast and go to my first training session, it's motivation. To build up my arm, I remember my dad had 48, 20 inches, and as I grew, my arm began to develop. We measured it at 37 centimeters, and it kept growing to 45. That's when I decided I had to surpass my dad. I mean, I didn't brag about it, but in my mind, I already had this idea of reaching 50. When I passed 50, it felt like a competition was going on. I thought, wow, it's still growing. 92, 92, 93, 96, 97, 98, 99. $100, 161. I used to pump my arm, but later it didn't swell as much. You understand? So when you have that kind of size, there's a certain limit to development. But honestly, when my arm was that big, that was the first time I truly felt fear. My hair turned gray for a real reason. Sometimes muscles really tear. I couldn't bend my arm at all and couldn't even wash my face because my arms just wouldn't work. There were several times after training when I really had to wash my face like this because I just couldn't reach my face with my hands. The pump was that big. That's how it was. So once again, if we're talking about advice, you need to be careful. I always say that it's not harmful to want something. What's harmful is not wanting anything. But when you want something, you can't just stop there. You need to start doing something about it. And to do something about it, you need to turn your wish into a desire, meaning you have to really want to achieve it. And then when you set a goal and you have a desire, it's not just, I want. That's just talk. You just chatted with a friend and that's it. But desire is when you sleep with it, when you wake up thinking about it, your soul is thinking about it as you go. You think about it, you go to bed with it. You always think about this process. At least 4 or 5 times a day, you remember it. Then it turns into the moment when you really start to desire it. And because of that, your body itself starts to help you.
You brought up the Blatney topic yourself. Is it true that they were always somehow close to bodybuilders in the 90s? For some reason, gangsters really respected bodybuilders. Golubo performed, the gangsters supported him, they rooted for him. But now it seems like that's no longer the case. Why was it before?
Why were bodybuilders always linked to people like that? Back then, our elites were criminals. The 90s were full of banditry. That's just how it was. But today, it's different. Now the elites are businessmen, entrepreneurs, established people, a new class.
Question. By the way, you said you used to work out back then? Sure, there were steroids, but not all these labs like today. How did people work out then? People say eat this or inject that, but how do you verify it?
Wait, everything was there before. Back when I remember in 2003, all the pharmacy drugs were available. Amnadren was sold in the pharmacy, Deca too. There were no underground labs. There weren't any. What they're making now, basically underground. So if you bought a product, it really worked. But now you don't know what you're getting. You can always end up being a test subject. What's in there?
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Okay, fine. It doesn't work. Fine. As long as you don't stick something in there that later they'll cut your ass open or something else happens, you know? And moreover, I'm just not ready. Today I'm running all the streams for the guys there, but seriously, today, I guess I'm just not ready to inject myself with something I'm not sure about.
Let's take the 90s. In the first year, Mishankin performed there, and everything was done by intuition. It was impossible to check tests there, unlike traditional ones, such as lactate and blood viscosity.
All right, Sanechka, I can't tell you right now how they did it. As soon as I had the opportunity, I always used tests. That is, since my early childhood, I was always supervised by a doctor. There was always a doctor whom we knew until my results. There's always a traceable chain, even now it can be brought up. What test did I have? So at some point, the pancreas was affected, there was poisoning. As it turned out, we were always involved in the process. Nothing was ever done blindly.
Did you used to cut water before competitions? So
actually, now that you mention it, I'm remembering this will be embarrassing. People often say, if only I knew then what I know now.
Diuretics, definitely. Which ones?
Diuretics, distilled, imagine sitting there with no carbs. Distillate, no carbs. So you have, I don't know, my record was 70 eggs a day. Imagine eating 70 eggs a day, no carbs, just cucumbers and 2 kilograms of chicken breast. Yeah, figuratively, distilled water, you get it. So I went through all those circles of hell, and today I can say, man, we used to be so reckless. But after going through all that, can you imagine the kind of practical experience you gain when you realize what you shouldn't do? And I've been advocating for balanced nutrition for a long time now, ever since I went to America. You don't need to cut out carbs. You don't need to cut out carbs. You should at least have a little. So I'm really trying to explain this. You don't need to stress or push your body to its limits. You need to make an agreement with your body, help it, and ask it to do what you need. And that's the ideal shape.
I was also told to drink distilled water, avoid salt except on cucumbers, eat only protein, then fast from drinking for 3 days and use the sauna or steam bath to sweat it out. This is...
everyone went through this too, Sanechka. Everyone went through this, you know. And then over time, when it seemed like there was some relief. For example, I remember back then that was the longest period. Today, it's a paradox. I only figured it out at the end, when I was free, how badly fruits and fructose affect me. So my argument is absolutely against fructose. It's easier for me to eat marshmallow.
Does it make you bloated, or what happens to you?
With it, I get bloated right away. Even any fructose, for me, it just creates a film instantly. You know, before, like, who would have thought of that? So before, even a green apple, remember you could have a green apple because it was supposed to be okay. Like an orange, like a grapefruit, that was totally fine back then. Honestly, it was just easier for me to stuff myself with sugar than to eat that.
Tell me, what are the prospects for a coach now if he comes to work at the gym?
If he's good, talkative, and great, Unfortunately, sorry, well, it is what it is. If he tells jokes well, and everyone, how should I put it? If he is a good conversationalist or can meet the client's needs, he has good prospects.
How do people seek out a psychologist?
I think, after all, let's be honest, a personal coach at work should be a psychologist. Well, it's impossible otherwise. You can't just train people by a template. And today, I'll tell you this. There are certain, even in my understanding, training templates. Yes, but until I see the person, I can't. I mean, let's say I'm constantly training with him. Yes, well, always. Here's my usual example. Per our plan, today's squat is 200 kilograms. But if I see that he came in and he's not a professional athlete, he's just an ordinary amateur, a businessman doing it, if he's having problems at work, then what 200 kilograms can we even talk about? He's just vulnerable. He's not ready for injuries. He needs to be prepared first, then we can assess his abilities during training. So you have to talk to him. Often just have a conversation, distract him, help him abstract himself. Only after that does he start training with him. And that's why psychology is very important here.
The classic debate, how do you gain muscle? But for some reason, in all the workouts and in many interviews, when they answer this question, no one gives this answer for a natural athlete or for someone using enhancements. Is there a difference? Supplements, or rather the protocol, when using enhancements? So, should the training be different? We're not talking about duration, but about the very principles of training itself.
The principles should be the same, but in practice they'll differ. The mindset, however, should remain unchanged. Regardless of whether I have the substance in my blood or not, I should approach it with the same attitude. To train and to get the most out of myself to the best of my ability today. Exactly, to the best of my ability today. Now, let's continue further. Today, it's not just about being able to lift this weight, but specifically about purposefully answering the question, why did I come to this training session? If you're here to lift, then lift. But if your goal is to build muscle, focus on working your muscles, not just lifting weight. These are completely different things. When we're working on a specific muscle group, it's a totally different story than just lifting. When we see Western bodybuilders working out with cheating, I understand what they're doing, but a beginner can't see that. They try to lift as much weight as possible, thinking the more weight they lift, the better it will be. No, you're just wearing yourself out, wasting energy, straining your nerves, and breathing wrong. This hurts your cardiovascular system, leaves you weak, tires you out faster, disrupts everything, and slows your recovery. That's why you take longer breaks to recover, your workouts last longer, glycogen depletes, and everything fades. In the end, it feels like I gave everything, but there's no result.
There's no recovery at all.
That's right, there's no recovery. We don't use oxygen while breathing when we're doing a set. You always know that. I often really like it when guys with experience come in and start breathing. You know, in medicine, it's written that you should exhale during exertion, right? Yes. But then why don't we move a heavy cabinet while exhaling? In real life. San, please explain to me, why don't we lift a heavy object while exhaling in real life? Physiologically, honestly.
I haven't thought about it.
Well, think about it. I guess when they wrote that, they just forgot about it. A little note that you need to exhale after you've gone through peak exertion, because it's with oxygen. You can handle peak effort, but without oxygen, you won't survive. Even if we exhale during pull-ups, we strain our abs instead of using our back.
Dasha, a question about chemistry. Some people buy from their friends, some from guys who sell, and many also buy on different websites. And about these websites, for example, I'm consulting someone and they ask, can you tell me which website to buy from? First, I don't give advice on that because it's a crime. And second, I'm not interested or involved. So tell me why? Why are there hundreds of these sites and why aren't they blocked, including those sites with prostitutes? They don't monitor such serious things closely enough.
Put simply, everything forbidden here becomes comically profitable. You see, I'm talking about something else. It's important to clearly understand how much harm these substances cause. If, for example, they were legalized and there was more quality control, I think there would be less hype around them.
I agree. It should be allowed if someone wants it.
Yes, because, well, again, if you look at it today, let's say GZT is basically, well, a man over 50 years old in 90% of cases should simply take these medications. That is, he should introduce a little testosterone into his body in any form, maybe as a gel, but again, it all depends on the doctor. It depends on his hormonal background, right?
Yes, that's right.
That's why I don't understand it today. Most likely it's a politically interesting question and just beneficial for someone.
What can you say about the weight, about the scheme? Even Golobochkin said, if you want big muscles, you need to lift heavy weights. Even when I was competing, well, basically I never aimed for heavy weights, but of course I was never that big.
Look, talking about the training process in theory right now is a bit frivolous. Let's try. Now we can raise the question, what are we lifting with? Our bodies are designed so we generally don't need muscles. Ligaments suffice, and muscles require upkeep. Strong ligaments are enough. Physiologically, that's it. It says, Sanek, forget your back muscles. We just need to maintain good ligaments. That's enough. There's no need to feed them as much or do anything more. And only our mind starts saying, no, we need to look good, we need muscles. And now the question is, why do we need muscles? So there's already a contradiction. Yes, when we talk about lifting a lot of weight, what do we train first? Ligaments or muscles?
Well, actually, they should always work together with energy. Yes.
But look, here's the thing. In our daily life, we use ligaments enough and muscles only activate when we need to handle extra weight. Yes, yes. In the gym, it's the opposite. Muscles should do the work, with ligaments only assisting. It's 70% ligaments, 30% muscles in daily life, but in the gym, it's 70% muscles, 30% ligaments. So what does that mean? It means that before you start doing the movement, tense the muscle you're working on, and with the muscle tensed, do both the positive and negative parts of the exercise.
You know, the Mensa method, they say that he actually developed it for natural athletes, but many Olympians used it too. For example, Dorian Yates, I think, trained that way. He would fully exhaust the muscles, sometimes using only one exercise. In general, what do you think? Can a natural athlete train in this way, or is it all risky and likely to cause injuries?
You know, I'll tell you this, we do get injuries. Subtitles, a little bit. Well, again, I won't make any claims here. Maybe I'd even discuss this with you in a dialogue. But today I have this inner conviction that an injury, we don't know. Like, we got injured, right? But we don't know how it would have been otherwise, right?
Yes, and
sometimes an injury happens. You can even tear your biceps just by throwing a bowling ball, right?
jumping off the pull-up bar, as I did overall.
It's just that we'll never know where it will tear. It seems like you always know about heavy loads and injuries. You know, is it like an excuse not to train hard? Basically, for example, my pectoral muscle tear. And today I understand, if I had clearly known earlier that you need to do deep interfascial massage to work out those trigger points that form. And for me, my chest is the most painful area. That is, all my other muscles are very soft. I mean, elastic. Yes, but my chest is just all tight. Even now, yes. And getting a chest massage is really hard for me. It's just so painful. And this trigger point that formed in the beginning, yes, which actually should have been massaged. Yes, it was already there. So eventually, if I hadn't massaged it, it would have torn. At 220, at 140, because they tear even with small weights, it doesn't matter. The injury starts much earlier. So for example, what causes neck tension? It's the nerves. Often when a person starts to get nervous, something starts to tighten up. So everything comes from within, from psychological irritation. The back gets pinched, seized up. Yes, surely many people understand this. Yes, he can deadlift 300. But somewhere he just bent over and something got pinched. It's like...
It happens, yeah.
You know, but basically we can do something. I threw out my back doing deadlifts. I actually had something like that happen to me just recently too. Those were the times. So besides everything that's going on, there's business, there are investments, there are workouts. In other words, my life is really full and busy. I did a 270 deadlift there and felt fine, but 5 days later my back hurt. What does that tell you? If it was going to hurt, it would have hurt immediately, right?
Tell me, when you injured your chest, what were you thinking at that moment? You understood that what you live for and what you do now could all go down the drain.
Same for me. I even had an unsigned universal contract just sitting there, and after struggling, I finally signed it. And my fear and rhythm were torn open on my chest, not even knowing yet whether I would perform or not. Can you imagine that level of responsibility?
What were you thinking, Sash?
It was a mess, a complete mess, because, well, I had just won Europe. And then I was preparing for tournaments. I had pretty much everything. It was all so ambitious. And in my head, I was shocked since things were like this for me, right? Until the breakup. I'll get injured, but Alexander Fedorov. Anyone can get injured. Like this guy gets injured, but I was always fine. That's the moment when you hear, hey kid, don't get too full of yourself. That grounded me. This is also an important moment. I have no regrets today with a torn chest. That was my performance. In 2003, it was already torn and wasn't repaired. I attended these competitions in such a condition that I couldn't bench more than 70 kilograms, working weights, focus on building muscle mass. Yeah, I couldn't do pull-ups due to the innervation and couldn't lift my own weight. I mean, the ligament was torn, and when the ligament is torn, there's no reflex. Pull-ups, I just couldn't do that movement. I just squeezed with whatever I could, you could say. The scan showed the lower part appeared torn, but it was beneath a lot of muscle. The ligament here wasn't visible, so the ligament was actually torn, the muscles were torn, some parts of the fibers remained, and I tore those fibers even more during the performance. Subtitles. But when they covered it up, there was a moment, probably the first 3 or 4 days, since swelling was severe and the doctor chose not to drain the blood. We waited for it to dissolve naturally. Those 4 days were the worst because I didn't know what would happen next. When he saw it, he said, don't worry. Maybe he knew. I'm not joking. Maybe he knew it was completely, maybe. Don't worry, he said. Just a major tear in the lower 2 fibers. Everything else is fine. And I slowly started training again, cautiously, because first of all, there were contracts at the time that were supporting me. It was the professional league that was created back then, so I was getting paid. So I was doing it professionally. I was training and I was getting paid for it. So for me, it was very important for me in general. Honestly, I am very grateful. So I'm grateful to fate and to God for the fact that I always had people who believed in me. This matters to me. To support me and believe in me, everything else I did myself. So if I have that, it's enough for me to push, fight, and achieve.
Dasha, about harmful methods, what do you think about things like drying out your legs, for example, wrapping them in plastic, doing cardio, and trying to get rid of water? Yeah,
I've tried it.
Also in a suit for maxers.
Right now, except I think it's nonsense. Well, maybe, when... Yeah, that's about cutting water for the guys to make weight. Maybe that's the case, but I've never had to make weight, so I can't really judge. Sanya, I haven't needed to. I've never had to make weight, not once, because my category was always open and above. So for me, the main thing was never to weigh too little.
And have you ever heard, or maybe someone you know has done it, the wildest stories about cutting weight? Can you tell me something?
Look, let's do it. So, about the polyethylene, I checked, I wrapped myself up, wrapped myself in polyethylene, put a rubber belt on top, and dressed warmly. What did I gain from this? It was hard to breathe, and I really suffered. My heart felt heavy. When your body can't breathe, it's very harmful. It's not like that. There's no such effect, but it does harm the body. The strain is so strong, it's just nonsense. I'm absolutely against it. Dressing warmly is necessary to maintain body temperature and just probably to always, so that your muscles don't get cold. If it's cold, for example, often in our fitness gym, there are air conditioners. So it's important to train in a way that you don't get cold during your workout. Next, if we're talking about cutting, the most ideal way. Well, for me personally, and in most cases for the guys I recommend this to, it's fasted cardio. For me, that's the best. Like a daily briefing. Do fasted cardio, to kickstart your metabolism for the day, and then just eat properly. Because today, the most nonsense I've heard, which I don't like, correct me if I'm wrong, we're having a conversation here. Maybe you can explain why people do this. Why do they do cardio after strength training? Their argument is it's to burn extra calories. I say, why not just avoid eating them in the first place?
You know what they say? They say I burned my glycogen and now I'm going to burn fat. For example, they say that during the first 40 minutes of running, only glycogen burns, and after that, fat starts burning. Basically, if your cardio workout, your aerobic workout is done properly and you do it within the right heart rate range, or I personally prefer the breathing test, when you're not out of breath.
Absolutely right. You
are basically burning calories.
Absolutely right. But perhaps don't combine them Strength training should be a separate stage.
If your goal is to look good, to really look good, then this will often get in your way.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. That's what I stand for. If we're talking about bodybuilding, it's all about muscle. If you've trained your muscles, like I just pumped my arms up to 56 centimeters, I need to go and feed them as quickly as possible, let them recover. No, I sit down for another hour of cardio, everything just fades away, I feel like crap, and even your inner state doesn't let you enjoy the process.
Your cortisol floods even more, absolutely.
That's right. So why do I now ask? Why are you doing an hour of cardio after your workout? Don't you have something better to do? I think it's better here if you want to get in shape to spend more time posing, feeling and flexing your muscles, controlling your body and hiding your flaws.
Those who are watching now and haven't tried it, they don't understand how hard and energy consuming it is. Of course,
time just...
You're sweating buckets.
It's really, it's good. There are 5 laps. In comparison, learning to breathe during competitions is even better than training. We have a performance, remember? A performance feels like shaking your legs 5 times under the spotlights because you're closed off and not breathing yet. If you start sweating somewhere, even once, that's it.
You also have to keep your abs tight. You have to hold it, crawl. Ego, hold it. And...
I was really lucky with that. America played its part in that too. They didn't teach us how to breathe while posing. It was tough. Later, when I learned to breathe while posing, I could only do the abs, the thigh, and the side pose. I held my breath, even just a little.
But on their stage, they really push you hard. When I watch our performance, one of ours ran off, but with them, it's just intense. If you're unprepared for our response, you could lose consciousness.
Absolutely right. And that's why, if I was a little lucky, Jeremy is the guy who choreographed the free program for Flix Villa. I got a chance to work with him, and he taught me how to breathe while posing. It was really cool, and honestly, it helped me a lot.
Now, they're really fighting and trying hard. One cup of tea is a tribute to willpower.
Here we go further. Well, that's the amount of food and still overeating. That's all. And in addition, what other big mistake did I make when I was coming back? After 6 months, I immediately started training my abs. You should only train your abs today if you want to shape them. When you're in a deficit when you're burning fat, that's when you should be burning it off. Meaning you need to build up all your muscles, but you need to learn to burn off your abs. That means everything should go inward, not outward. You shouldn't be building it out, but rather inward. So this is already in order to...
It didn't grow, so I never trained it while bulking.
Absolutely, yes. It's easier to just pull it in and do a vacuum, do it during cardio, static loads, vacuum in static. Yes, you pull it in, tense it, pull it in, tense it. You can do 2-3 movements just so it doesn't cramp up. Sometimes when gaining muscle, untrained muscles are more likely to spasm. That can happen, but there's no point in training it by itself until you're in a good deficit.
Listen, they say that back in Arnold's time, there wasn't even such a term as overtraining.
It was always there. I'll tell you this, I experienced overtraining twice myself. I felt that terrible state, and for me it was definitely overtraining.
Well, describe it so the guys can understand. It's
a temperature of 37, the kind you can't do anything about. Your muscles ache badly. You feel this fatigue and you're not even sick.
Sometimes that's also how rhabdomyolysis appears, when you've overexerted yourself and damaged your muscles. And this can really affect your kidneys. So really, overtraining is not just something psychological. Because of this, you could end up in the hospital on sick leave and so on.
And in this state, you absolutely shouldn't make any effort. It's just a bedridden level. That's it. Your body is saying, we're completely exhausted. If you don't go through this, again, you won't learn to listen to your body. That's why, since I've gone through this process myself, today, I try to train my clients in such a way that their central nervous system doesn't get strained, but their muscles are fatigued. So, roughly speaking, if we're working out shoulders, your arms shouldn't be able to lift, but you yourself should still feel energetic. You trained your back and it feels armored, but you still want to work out your legs. So, in this range, we can use our training time very efficiently.
About the first sports nutrition. Tell me about the very first one you remember.
The first sports nutrition. That's what happened. Banana and strawberry protein in those long, thin cans were brought to my dad from Germany. It was even cooler than ice cream, you.
Felt the magic from that can.
There was real magic. I remember Dad split it into 3 parts. It was worth its weight in gold, and I managed to take a little sip from his. It was really delicious, Sanya. It was so tasty at that moment, even better than ice cream. Seriously, I really liked the strawberry one, especially when he made it with milk. Oh, with apple juice, it was just amazing.
Do you need cardio if your goal is to gain mass? I noticed that many athletes, when they're working out to gain mass, forget to train. Not just build mass, but actually train their heart and their entire cardiovascular system. Basically,
I believe that doing cardio is absolutely necessary. It's just a matter of how much you do. And
in what amount?
again, let's do it this way, individually. First of all, we need to understand daily life, whether it's sedentary or not. If a person, well, an office worker is one thing. So for them, I think even 20 minutes would already be good. Active people need a little more. Moreover, cardio should be something that takes you out of your comfort zone. If a person walks a lot, then it can't be a treadmill, no? Because their body has adapted to it. So something needs to be changed. It could be walking upstairs, or it could be a stationary bike, but it should be something that's different from everyday life. That's when it will really count as cardio. Otherwise, often people hear, like, I walk 15,000 steps and then I get on the treadmill and walk fast and I think I'm doing great. But in reality, he hasn't done anything. I mean, the efficiency of this cardio is basically zero.
Do you have any nutrition tips that you recommend to guys who come to the gym and work out? For themselves, not competing, just for themselves.
I'll put it this way today. I tell everyone, let's take a basic calculator, any calculator for proteins, fats, and carbs, and just try to calculate what you might get to start with. What you need is just to find a maintenance diet, not for gaining, but for maintaining, just to stabilize things, at least to understand somehow. And before you start doing this, you just download a calorie counter and start entering everything that goes into your mouth. The person already starts losing weight.
Many people say, I don't eat and I'm losing weight. But when asked about calories, they admit they haven't counted.
Yeah. When he starts counting, he's already shocked. And you get it, right? So he realizes that even if he wants to eat that candy, he would have eaten it, but now he has to count it. It's better not to eat it at all than to have to count it. Sometimes a paradox can occur, right? With some manipulation, we can change things. It just depends on desire. Because a person might be at a crossroads here. Either eat the candy, it's no big deal, I won't count it, or forget about it, I won't eat it because then I'll have to count it.
How can you most effectively preserve muscle and burn fat at the same time if a person isn't using any performance-enhancing substances? What training and nutrition guidelines should be followed?
First of all, you need to understand how much time is needed for recovery. People train differently. Some need to train every other day because their bodies require it. Because maybe a person's inner world also matters a lot. It really affects how much they can give themselves to training. A professional athlete is one thing. Someone who is preparing for competitions, he's almost like a professional athlete. But an amateur who goes to work, for him training is not a top priority at all. That's a whole different story. That's why everything here is unique, Sash. No two people are the same. There is a template that I start with, but then everything branches out differently anyway. I can't give a clear definition here because, well, just imagine, sitting across from me is Alexander de Zaria. Yeah, is there anyone else like that on this planet? No.
Everyone is unique.
Everyone is unique, and people like to say things are just the way they are. If we were robots, it would be boring. Thank you. Imagine that. We tend to think there are only basic colors like blue or black, but how many more shades actually exist? And these shades also exist. These shades bring a lot of emotions into our lives. If you pay attention, even carbohydrates can be considered. Let me use myself as an example. Before, when I was preparing for Europe, I used pasta for carb loading, and potatoes used to make me bloated. Today, it's potatoes that fill me up, or maybe even fatty meat with a piece of white bread. I come to training and I get bloated, but before that wouldn't happen to me. It used to just sit in my stomach like a lump. the body starts to change. It has something. It's like it's on its own. It makes our mind listen to it. And often we as humans live in such a way that the body serves our mind. It just serves it. If we want to go somewhere, we just go. Even if the body is already tired and can't go anymore, we think it's no big deal.
Say it. After cutting, I gained from 91 to 110 at most in
20 kilograms, yes.
Up to 20 kilograms, but not in 5'7". I had to lose weight rapidly to fit the classic category. And I'm curious, what about your bounce back? What was your maximum?
The most I ever weighed was 151, 152 kilograms, and that's 25.
25? How long did it take me to gain that?
A long time ago. Do you remember when? That was after the 2003 season when I competed with Ronnie Colvin and Cutler. Then I won a car and we went to Thailand. When I arrived at the airport, I stepped on the scale, but since it only went up to 150, it couldn't show my weight. I weighed about 152 and a half.
Tell me, did you ever use diuretics during your competitive career? Yes.
What helped me, well, what worked more or less well for me, and so over time. Much of this was done blindly. It was just try and pour. All the other diuretics didn't really work well for me, and then later I was able to get in shape without diuretics.
But in general, are they necessary or not?
I don't think so. I think that today, if we prepare properly in advance, we shouldn't have to cut weight in the last month or month and a half. You remember how it used to be, right? First we bulked up and then we cut. When I went to America, I said, listen, I'm cutting. He asked, what does cutting mean? Then standing there, he asked again, what is cutting? He said, we don't use cutting, we use conditioning. Conditioning means full, juicy muscles. This is entirely different from our terms and concepts. We dry ourselves out like a herbarium specimen and end up looking like this dried sugar thing. No energy, sunken eyes, angry. And honestly, to hell with it, you don't need it anymore. But Americans, you see, they're in good shape, smiling, competing every week, and they can keep doing that all year long.
Is it true their supplements and dosages are different, or is that a myth?
No, that's all not true. You see, we Russians always find an excuse to justify ourselves, so we don't do anything. We're just here. You know what really affects an athlete and helps them progress? Support. It was really unpleasant for me when after a long break I came back to social media, to Instagram, and I just noticed how much support I had. Russia, it's with Ukraine. Even Russia was barely there. I mean, even Ukraine was a bit higher in terms of support statistics than Russia. And America was in first place. Brazil was there too. I don't know. I've never been to Brazil, but I was shocked when foreigners supported me more than a Russian freak. Yeah, I don't know how. At least it's more than our own people. And there were more words of support from there. From Russians, there was more crap, negativity. Until our mentality changes, we'll keep ending up in situations like this. Always playing catch up. I mean, it'll always be easier for them. It's all for one simple reason. If you're Russian and enter an American gym to compete, everything is available to you, regardless of nationality. So, Alexei, what do you need? There's already water there when I want a drink, and they've already brought the canister. I say I just want a little, and it's ready. Alexei, do you need protein, help, or anything? Need a t-shirt? Take one. Yours is wet. That's their approach, and I don't get it. That is, our mentality today is very harsh towards ourselves.
What is the attitude in our society and there toward great people like you?
Well, first of all, don't forget that there are a lot of overweight people in America. Obesity somehow has an impact there, every third person. I mean, even when you arrive at the airport, you see a lot more overweight people. So for them, big people are considered more of a norm. When you're not fat but muscular, I think for them it's like, as if you managed to turn fat into muscle. Well, that's just a stereotype. It's like fantasies, associations. Of course, they have a much more relaxed attitude toward bodybuilders than we do. You know how it is here. Like, there goes a dumb and underdeveloped meathead. They don't have that over there.
Here's a bit of a personal question. How do you feel about your child, for example, getting into competitive bodybuilding?
My child should do whatever they choose. Today he chooses to play hockey. He plays hockey, and I fully support him. So he continues.
All right, let's put it this way. If he's not competing professionally in some sport, and I'm getting to that question, and he didn't tell you, and you suddenly catch him, that not being a professional athlete, you find a pile of steroids in his closet or bag.
That won't happen here since he has everything he needs, and we're already discussing what, why, and how with him. I think that anyway, I'm leading him to ask about it.
And will you try to talk him out of it?
No, I'll give him a perspective for growth and then let him make his own choice.
What do you think about steroids and performance-enhancing drugs outside of sports?
If it's like hormone replacement therapy, I mean,
No, just for fun? Like if someone wants to look more ripped?
All right, let's put it this way. Using chemicals to get more ripped is nonsense. But when you've actually reached your potential and you're working like a horse and you've really done everything, you've got your diet in check, you're recovering, you're sleeping, and you're resting. And when you're already prepared for this and you want just a little bit more, meaning you've reached your potential as a natural athlete, and if you want to take it up just a little bit, in small preventive doses, considering that you'll go to a good doctor, get tested, and have no contraindications, I'm not against it. That's it.
If you take all your acquaintances, let's say among athletes, not professionals, just people who work out, and suddenly started using gear, tell me what percentage of these people started using gear without even reaching their natural potential?
Honestly,
Well, what are the options?
almost all of them.
Almost all of them. And why does everyone choose the easy way?
Because it's always like that. Let's figure it out this way. Honestly, right now, you and I both need to work to earn a living. Well, let's be honest. Usually, if you take any person, they work to earn money. If you just give them money, will they work? And if we're not talking about a favorite activity, a person does what they love and it brings them income. No, we mean someone working only for money.
Well, if it's that kind of job, of course not. If we take medicine, for example, I like it, I would say yes. But if it's a job I don't like, then no.
Now you're practicing medicine, not just for that. It's also extra income.
Well, it's more than that. Now, in my life, it's more like a passion, a hobby, I would say mainly. That's it.
You see, so that's why today it turns out like this, right? Why should I train hard? Train? If you can take a shot now, you can train less and easier. Well, it's a huge temptation.
Of course.
People don't realize the consequences of this.
Do you think there's psychological dependence on chemicals? Absolutely.
Of course. After using chemicals, working out at the gym feels really depressing.
It's not like it was before.
Oh no. When you still don't know what chemicals are, you're still working out. But after you've tried them, after that, it's tough to return, even to exercising without chemicals. So you really have to force yourself. You need to have tremendous motivation just to go to the gym and keep it up. This is really serious. I'm very grateful to my dad for what he says. It's your life. In no way, if the course is over and nothing has changed, we still have to work hard. And, that's how it is. It's very important. I'll say it again. It's very important what you believe in. What you believe in works very strongly. Because you see, there was a moment when it was the same chemistry, the same cycle. One season I gained 176 pounds. Everything is fine. And 6 months later, it's the same cycle and I can't do anything. Yeah, my mind isn't present. I have to handle financial problems and need so many things. I'm not really living professional. The life of an athlete, I mean, there are a lot of combined factors here. If you've turned to pharmacology, that's the very last resort, and everyone has to agree to it. Recovery, nutrition, everything has to be structured, and only after that can you turn to pharmacology, just so it can help you a little bit. And under no circumstances should you start with pharmacology. As a doctor, you know that if you haven't begun burning fat, both muscle and fat can increase, especially with a high fat percentage.
Well, unless you're genetically gifted.
Exactly. That's why you must handle this carefully and professionally. So in my case, when I was coming back in 6 months, I immediately went on a strict diet. I created a surplus, for example, with healthy fats, good protein, the right kind of protein that my body absorbs well. I immediately added cardio and balanced my carbohydrate intake. Yes, I began using pharmacology quickly, but only after realizing I was already getting enough vitamins. You should at least take a B vitamin course, since a deficiency limits your pharmacology options.
Sash, yes, Yeah, I just remembered it was probably my last season, the very last one, when in the second to last I got into really good shape. Back then it had just debuted. That muscular look was probably the driest I've ever had on stage. Backstage I was told you can't be so dry in this category. I kept squeezing into those shorts because I avoided leg training. They're already big in daily life. And the next year, in terms of support, I had just a ridiculously small amount. I thought, okay, I'll get pumped up for the next season and it'll really take off. You know, I trained even harder, though it seemed like I couldn't possibly do more. I would get up at 5 in the morning for my first workout, go to a basement gym near my house. It was really rough, didn't even have hot water, just really basic. I'd do cardio there in the morning, then later in the day, I'd go back and do strength training, cutting, and circuit workouts. All of this was while I was on a diet, and considering that I had surgery, it was all after that. And surprisingly, I didn't get the same shape, not even close. I did much worse, much, much worse. And I was so upset and wondered how this could happen. Well, how could this happen? That's my question. I think the question I had was exactly what you just said. My mind was occupied with other things. Of course, I signed up for the competition, but physically,
I wasn't there.
not there. Yes, I did it, and I did everything that was required of me, but mentally, I wasn't ready. Absolutely.
Right?
Here's a question for you, Popoznani follows. Tell me, please, in competitive bodybuilding in our country, when you compete, do they give you a can of protein or sponsor contracts? None. For what reason?
Sanechka, let me put it this way. I always did it for myself back in my day. I'm very grateful to Vladimir Ivanovich Dubinin because he eliminated any star syndrome when I became junior world champion. I tell everyone about him. He doesn't remember, but I'm very grateful. That's what happened. My dad always said, Sasha, when you win the world championship, your life will change and you'll be a champion. Well, everything changes. I become a world champion, but my life stays the same. I didn't get it. And then we go to Vladimir Ivanovich to make the next plans. I'm 20 and already feeling ambitious and bold. Vladimir Ivanovich, I don't get it. I'm a world champion, but my federation won't even give me a can of protein.
Where's my bag of gold?
Where is this? What's happening? Vladimir Ivanovich was just at his fancy office desk. And he stands there, comes up close to me and says in slang, Sanya, why don't you get lost? Well, I told him to get lost. If it's not you, it'll be someone else. And to hell with him if he's worse. He spoke in a clear, half-whisper, swearing but not shouting. You know, Sasha, after that I realized that nobody owes me anything in this life. You do it for yourself. Now, when athletes or anyone come to me, I ask why they want to compete. He says it's for the medal. I tell him, do you understand that aiming for a medal in a subjective sport is a utopia?
It's very subjective. I agree.
If we're talking about world achievements, like running the 100 meters there, you can fight for a medal to be the best. In a subjective sport, you're always competing against yourself. That means today you have to be better than you were yesterday, and tomorrow better than you are today.
Yes, you have genetic potential.
And only on stage can you get what you trained for. But again, not the result itself, but the recognition of those around you. That is, often it can happen that you were first, but they made you third. But everyone else tells you, Alex, you were much better than 6 months ago. That's enough. Thank you. That means you've already won compared to the period when you were training. So what's important is not the victory itself, but the path to victory, if it's taken and the result is achieved. And you realize 1, 2, 3 people came up to you there and you see that, yes, there are results. I competed at this weight 6 months ago. Now I'm at this weight. My form is good. People liked everything, so everything is great. It might just happen that you were third last time and now you're third again, but today you're competing against stronger opponents. They weren't there back then. Yeah.
They're not standing still either. And that's...
So when you start fighting, I have to win, but you don't understand how the other athlete prepares. But the point is, you need to see how you progress compared to yourself.
My opinion is very simple. If you did everything possible, everything that depended on you, absolutely everything you could, the result no longer matters. You only regret if you missed something.
I'll tell you even more. When you've done everything that's important to you and you relax, the result is the best.
Paradox, editor.
So as soon as you start letting go of the situation today, not stressing about life, you get a lot more benefits from it than when you obsess over things.
Many competitive athletes often have troubled personal lives. As a doctor, I'm also a bit of a psychologist. I talk to the guys when they come in and say, oh God, I've decided to quit. I don't want to do this anymore. And very often when I ask why, they say that their personal life is really suffering. Well, he says, first of all, because the life of a professional bodybuilder itself is difficult. You're constantly preparing. You're always under mental and psychological stress. You're on gear. You're less restrained. You might say something rude, and sometimes your libido is off the charts. That's why many people cheat. That's how it is. I have examples where guys on a cycle have 1, 2, 3, even 4 women, but as soon as they get off, their relationships become perfect. What do you think? Do professional athletes suffer in that part of life that we don't see?
I'll tell you this, for me, it was a bit different. I went through this path once. Everyone was crazy about me. I lived with my parents, but fortunately I had my dad. Well, and my dad, since he was in the know, he understood, he knew what it was. He dieted himself. He knew what it was like. So it was easier. And but at first it was always my mom who suffered more from it. And then later on, all my loved ones started to suffer too. And there was this tendency that you all should understand me just because that's how I am, like aggressive. And at one point, it even turned out that I isolated myself. Well, my training back then, I don't know if you know or not, I used to train at the Southern Cemetery in the locker room. So basically, I was isolated from society. That really saved me. My communication circle was small. But my close ones, like my wife and close relatives, they understood, they were prepared. I'd warn them, guys, I'm about to spiral, just ignore me. So it's important, if you really can't handle it psychologically on your own, you need to prepare people for that. They're not ready to see you different. And even today, sometimes I watch videos of myself, how I looked, for example, when I was sitting somewhere while people were relaxing. While in my group, I wonder, who is this jerk? Really, today I look at myself with those eyes. They recently showed a video about 20 years old. I wonder how people tolerated me when I look at myself. It's really a tough story. And that's why it's important to prepare the people who are close to you. Sometimes you may want to say early on, please forgive me for being such a jerk. If you know about it, that's it. What's most interesting is, my last preparation after America all happened under a strict deficit, likely not just due to pharmacology, but because of...
Value arises from deficit and tension.
From the tension, because it's like forbidden fruit. As soon as we forbid ourselves, we want it. Yes, from that, no. Even the right pharmacology usually doesn't change a person much. Sometimes it even makes him kinder since things are going well. It's more about a food deficit. A hungry person is an angry person. If you balance your diet, control portions, and know when to relax your eating, your central nervous system suffers less. And your loved ones don't suffer either.
What is the optimal duration for the first cycle? For a beginner, so he comes to you and says, Alexander, you won't talk me out of it. I want to...
Saneshka, I'll be honest, I can't take responsibility for the cycle today. I have a doctor on my team, and I send him there before I say I'm not against it anymore. For example,
how long do they usually stay after sitting down?
For me, the maximum was 4 to 6 weeks. When I started, it was 4-6 weeks, then a break. That's not right. And I had a 2-3 week break, then a 4-6 week one. The medications changed, and that was all. This happened twice a year. The rest of the time, I trained and maintained myself. So there were B vitamins, some other things were injected. That was my starting level. Today, I know all this. After all, medicine, especially sports medicine, has advanced. And today, I think that's it. Probably, no more than 8 weeks. Definitely no more. To start with, maybe 6 weeks. That's the maximum. Because, again, first of all, what kind of broadcasts are accepted? What?
And many, take pills because they think the first cycle is safer with pills and they start ruining their liver. Also,
yes, stronger. Do you know what you're taking and which manufacturer? Again, product purity matters. You might take a methane pill with no effect, but the same pill from another manufacturer could cause liver swelling. Again, it depends on the purity.
And what are some of the severe consequences for people? Well, has there ever been any real horror after using chemicals like meth? I don't know, maybe someone overdosed or got hepatitis, or any stories where people got infected?
Not me, you see. I don't really get involved in other people's situations. The only thing I notice right away about a person is, first of all, when someone is red, right away, you just really understand that their hematocrit is high. I don't know, it's already time to drain or do something else. Yeah, a lot of breakouts, pimples, the smell. Yeah, all of that comes from excess, from the wrong kind of greed in perception. They eat too much protein, and that's when acetone issues begin. And as I've seen this happen multiple times, on one hand, you want to say either take a shower or stop eating junk. But again, not everyone will understand this the right way.
Girls are watching too, and many oppose their guys taking cycles. Well, because they behave unpredictably, because they might start cheating again because of it, and the girls are always trying to catch them. Tell me, how is it in general? Can a girl suspect that her boyfriend started a cycle? Are there any signs? You said his smell might change and he could break out. In general,
First of all, let's put it this way. Muscle density starts to change right away. So you immediately...
he's always pumped up.
Well, it's different. If he was pumped up once, his behavior still changes. It changes partially. That's true. Usually he immediately starts checking himself in the mirror more. Well, honestly, I mean, he immediately starts acting a little differently. He checks if something has grown or not. Maybe he doesn't measure every centimeter. By the way, I'm surprised, but people don't measure their size. I'm surprised because for me, that was the main thing. So after all, when you want to see more on the measuring tape, size is still a mental thing. You push yourself to grow, it's a psychological factor when you just look at yourself. Well, you look like a handsome guy. Yeah, handsome. But here's the question. When you're in a good mood, you're handsome. But when you're in a bad mood, you're crap. Well, and if we're talking about girls, honestly, it will change depending on your mood again.
From my own experience, I can say that many people judge based on whether a person is aware or not, for example, by how much they want sex. For some reason, this idea that...
Yes.
Well, no, on the contrary, like when someone's on a cycle, for some reason people think a bodybuilder can't get it up. I don't get it. Can you explain where this even came from? It's actually the opposite for a bodybuilder.
Come on, let's go. Does protein make it hard to get it up? Let's go further.
That's just completely...
Remember the story, don't eat protein or you won't get it up? Do you recall its origin?
Where does this nonsense come from?
Just because...
How can a bodybuilder have erectile dysfunction while on testosterone? Unless his prolactin spiked, it's usually the opposite. You think it's not like that, but it is.
Most likely it's different. People just latch onto the moment when he's coming off, he doesn't feel like it. And that's what they focus on and start talking about. So, it's like you heard a bell ring, but you don't know where it is and you already start talking about it. So often whenever sexual activity decreases, it's usually after the cycle, right? When everything's down, you don't want to do anything. No training, sex, nothing, right? That's when people say bodybuilders can't get it up. That's it. Someone, 1, 2, 3. At the very beginning, 5. They said it and it spreads everywhere.
This only happens in our country. I haven't seen it elsewhere. Other countries don't assume someone taking a course can't perform.
Oh, their grandparents are in a course and can always manage it.
Friends, today we've covered many interesting topics and we'll discuss more: sports, medicine, and science. And if these topics and areas are close to you, there's a link under this video to my free webinar where we talk about testosterone and everything related to it. So go ahead, click the link, register. Everything is absolutely free. There, I also present to you my project, Fitness as Science, about body transformation, nutrition, a healthy lifestyle, and shifting your priorities in the right direction. So click the link below this video and join absolutely free. It used to be thought that if you felt bad during a workout, like you went and threw up or got dizzy or even lost consciousness, that used to be seen as positive and happened more often than now. I lost consciousness twice myself. Why does this happen now? Because they don't produce, they don't break things down. I'm being difficult. I want you to admit that people are lazier now.
I feel like throwing up, but I've actually never thrown up in my life. No matter the training, I was always on the edge, but managed. I felt like that. My head was spinning. Yeah, my head could start hurting. Yeah. Very often, because her legs have a lot of muscle, blood rushes there and away from your head, making you feel dizzy. That happened. Why was the situation in America so intense while we were preparing? And the preparation didn't go very well. There was a lot of exhaustion. Yes, but I didn't actually lose my condition there. That didn't happen. Why today? Well, first of all, we shouldn't forget that people really love pre-workouts. Pre-workouts. What is a pre-workout? Basically, often your blood pressure goes up, right? Yeah. So what happens during heavy strength training? Blood pressure increases further. What usually happens next?
I'm totally against pre-workouts.
Absolutely. Even in my own product line, when people ask if I'll make a pre-workout, I say I don't use it. Currently, my product line includes only items I personally use, which is why I began making them. So why don't I like pre-workouts? Because most pre-workout supplements affect the central nervous system, meaning they cause aggression. So aggression can happen, yes, maybe in strength sports or combat sports. Yes, sometimes you need it to avoid pain or similar issues. In bodybuilding, on the contrary, the more you feel your muscles, the better. That is, you can fuel yourself with good carbs, good nutrition, so you have a good pump and a good nitrogen balance. Yes, but never overload your central system as it provides your drive.
Most injuries occur when the central nervous system is exhausted.
That's right, absolutely right. I'm repeating, we prepare for injuries, but you can't use up everything at once. It depletes slowly until eventually something snaps.
How do you get clothes? Where do you even buy them? Listen, everything
Is very simple. Classic suits and shirts, I have them tailored. Jeans, those are with elastic thread. T-shirts fit, sweaters fit, so that's how it is. And I found jackets from guys who bring them from abroad, and I buy them.
Pants are likely the main problem here.
These jeans should have an elastic band in the leg for some stretch.
And stretching, yes, cardio. Or warm-up sets, everyone does it differently. Some say you need to do one warm-up set, then start the workout. Some say you don't need to, just run for 10 minutes before the workout, and that's enough, you can start right away. Others say you just need to do some good pull-ups. So my first question is, what is optimal in the gym in terms of preparing for an exercise to avoid injury, besides perfect technique and everything else?
Yes, it's still individual, but I think first of all, you need to maintain it, raise your body temperature, so that you're all warmed up, especially during the winter period when you're used to being cold. Well, going to the weights doesn't make sense, simply put. Warm up in any way you can and then stretch the joints that are going to be under stress. There's no reason to warm up your legs if you'll be training shoulders. You can just go for a run to raise your overall tone, get your blood flowing, and warm up. You could say, roughly speaking, that you can be a fan of warm clothes. I like to start my workout in warm clothes because it was cold in our gym. I always dressed warmly and did a specific warm-up. That is, I warmed up the areas that would be involved in the workout. And after that, I would start my workout.
Do you track your health? If yes, what do you monitor and how often?
Definitely a clinical blood test, biochemistry, hormonal tests. I do an ultrasound of the abdominal cavity, and I constantly check my heart.
And how often do you do an ultrasound, for example, of your heart?
Once every 6 months. Because there are other factors too. When I finished training, my cardiologist strongly advised me not to return to sports because this valve doesn't close completely. So this has been an issue for me for a long time. And blood kind of seeps through there, meaning it doesn't close all the way. I don't really like to get into these things because the more you know about it, the worse your life gets afterwards. So I try to leave all that to monitoring. I say, I'm fine, it's all good. If everything is fine, then everything is fine. I prefer it that way. But still, when there are any problems, I don't ignore them. I try to work on them and always stay under observation. So what's the most interesting thing about my athletic heart? So when I was bigger then, at the moment when I lost weight, it didn't work steadily enough. And it seemed like there were even some contraindications. What shouldn't I do? But the thing is, I kind of convinced the cardiologist. I mean, I've never gone against the doctors who are treating me. First, when reaching an agreement, I told Natalia Valentinovna, who has been treating me since childhood, I said, let's agree on this. If the situation gets worse, I'll stop. Well then, when I gained 20 kilograms, my heart actually returned to its athletic norm and started working even better. So in my case, look, it works for the better.
Tell me, a lot of people ask, what's the best exercise for the chest or the best exercise for the shoulders? I've always been a supporter of, my own training principles. I make up for the lack of weight and don't chase heavy weights. It's about the quality of the exercise and the technique. So I never go up in weight if my technique suffers. I've always been all about perfect technique. Absolutely. Between sets, you should flex and feel it. When I competed, I would even pose So when I work my back, I really flex it between sets, and that actually helped me concentrate even better during the sets. But for some reason, people are always looking for some kind of magic, some magical exercises. I believe there are none.
Look, there's always something. At a certain time, there's always a favorite exercise. Well, just a little better than the others.
Everyone loves it. I love, for example, working out.
Triceps, that's the best for you. The one,
That doesn't grow.
this is the best exercise for.
What you like, that intuition.
Everything feels intuitive, but now it's headed in a different direction. Unfortunately, it turns out that when we train by ourselves, we still end up staying in our comfort zone. But training is really about stepping out of your comfort zone. That's why there should always be a coach with an outside perspective who can guide you where you need to go. Even today, I'll tell you this. If I were to start training now, I would really try hard to convince my dad to come to my training sessions. Though he's 70 now and truly finished with all that, I still want him at my training sessions. Because an outside perspective will still guide you, support you somewhere, back you up, and notice things. How can it be done even better?
Do you know, that's why when people ask why I have a coach, since I already know how to let go, what to do, and handle manipulations, I have an answer. I'm not objective about myself. I was looking through photos with a friend when I was preparing, and it seemed to me that I looked bloated there or that I looked small somewhere. So, in other words, I'm not objective about myself. That's one thing. Second, there's this constant feeling of not enough. A coach should also know when to hit pause, not just keep pushing you. And sometimes, yes, to slow you down.
Let me say, let's slow down. Often that's actually a good thing. It's rare for a coach to slow you down. Usually they're there to support you and reassure you that everything's okay. So you might not finish something and get really upset about it. Today's training just isn't going well. Well, no matter what you do, at that moment of disappointment, you just don't have enough imagination to structure it and steer it in a different direction. The coach serves as supportive background, helping you regroup or providing support.
Zash, tell me, what do you think about stretching between sets?
Saneshka, very positively, I really like it. And you know, it's an important thing. I only did the splits when I was 12 or 13, when I was doing taekwondo, and when I started bodybuilding professionally. Well, I used to stretch, but not that much. But when I came back in 2014, I set a goal to do the splits. And I only stretched then. I stretched my hamstrings a lot when I was training my hamstrings, and thanks to that, I was able to do the splits, and my mobility improved. And that's why today, again, without overdoing it, really focusing on how it feels, clearly understanding that if there are phases, you can always sense them. If it's not stretching, you don't need to force it. So if I feel some pain or tightness there, for example, my left arm is worse than my right, it means something's wrong. I go for a massage. And try to find that spasm somewhere, the one that needs to be relaxed. And after that, I continue stretching again.
Tell me, what about the duration of the workouts? There are a lot of debates. Some people say that a workout, well, let's talk about natural athletes, should be finished within an hour. If we set aside individual talent, I mean, for the majority of people, on average, what does a workout require when you're training to gain muscle or when you're training to lose weight? Go ahead.
So, an average workout, right? We're talking about bulking.
Average,
I believe that a workout, including warm-up and a bit of checking yourself out in the mirror, shouldn't exceed an hour and a half. It shouldn't exceed that. Well, under no circumstances, except that we also recover between sets until our breathing is fully restored. There's no such thing as resting for 1, 2, or 3 minutes. You need to rest exactly as long as you need to catch your breath after pushing yourself during the exercise and messing up your breathing. Proper breathing helps you avoid breathlessness, recover faster, and allows for a more intense workout. It also depends on how ready you are now. If you didn't sleep enough, woke up at the wrong time, or have a bad mood, your workout will still feel long, but with headphones, good mood and energy, you'll stay in that positive state. It might take longer, so you still need to take that into account. We never managed to start exactly on time. No, not a robot. We can't turn a person into a robot. We always have to consider their current state and be able to adapt.
Regarding the bathhouse, sauna, and workouts, how do you or your trainees combine them?
Every Tuesday, I take my child to the bathhouse for 3 hours. It's not really a family place. It's more of a men's club for people with similar interests. I love the bathhouse. while the sauna is mainly for warming up. I'm not a huge fan, to be honest, but I try. If it's the bathhouse, I train Monday and Tuesday, take Wednesday off, and visit the bathhouse Tuesday evening to rest the next day. And it's always been like that. I also try to get a massage so that the next day is a rest day, so that my muscles are relaxed, unless it's a specialized massage that I do for a specific purpose. For example, to relax, I try different things like massaging my chest muscles, which I really enjoyed. The next day, when they're relaxed, I fill them with blood to get more hypertrophy and a better pump. It's individual. Not everyone needs this, but for me, it was essential.
Zash, how ambitious are you as a coach?
No, I don't want to. For me, being a coach, I don't want to be a coach. Today, I like being a mentor, a support, to be there when I'm needed. As for my athletes becoming great champions, I guess that's not really for me. For me, if I can contribute something with every training session I conduct and make my trainees' life even a little bit better and help preserve their health and longevity, I will already be happy.
What goals do you have for yourself over the next 5 years?
Good question. I have different goals. I mean, there's the direction of being a businessman, an entrepreneur, and a mentor. And here's an interesting point. Today, I stick to this rule. If you want to make God laugh, share your plans. 2 years ago, I couldn't even imagine myself as a coach. It all just happened on its own. Now, I enjoy what I'm doing. Today, we are developing. I literally think it's about to be released. It's already on the home stretch, just a little bit left. A program that will be able to manage a training split on your phone. So you don't necessarily need to come to me for this. For example, your trainee can use this program and send you their feedback through a report. So today I'm really pushing for bodybuilding to move away from just theory and more into the realm of sensations. So I would like people who are involved with their bodies, with bodybuilding as building the body, they would focus more on sensations. So that's the kind of inner state I have. A goal is being formed for the near future to convey to people that we ourselves today can make ourselves better, stronger, yes, and healthier. If we don't learn to listen to our bodies, no one else will do it for us.
So for example, in the first set, you push yourself as much as possible. It gives you a certain weight. It's dynamic and uses the full range of motion. So if you let go, it won't fall. I'll show you now.
I'll ask you a question. It's a cool story. From a marketing perspective, it looks great. Ask your question, but people tend to slack off.
Yes, and...
What? It turns out to be nonsense. He just acts like it's hard and that's all.
I love exercises, especially negative reps, and pushing my gym partners to do one more while I stand over them. I'm not saying there will be more negative repetitions now, and I know perfectly well that he already feels like he's just hanging on the bar, that he's not pressing anymore. Then it's my turn. I let him do the same, and he knows. Now it's your turn for me, then mine for you. Yeah. I get that he's slacking. The sets are too different, and he's acting like it's hard. I say it won't work. Of course it will. 6 more times, Sanechka.
Of course, that's why it's nothing. Today, it's very much called the world of computer technology. It's called biohacking. Yes, now it is. Yes, that's how it is, But unfortunately, a person can't be replaced. I mean, a program still can't get into the human brain, the mind. Here's a good example. I liked the leg straightening and heard about my 4x100.
4x100?
4 sets of 100 reps. So you set it up and often your muscles start to burn already by the 20th rep. It seems like by the 25th you want to quit. But if you don't quit, you'll definitely finish it. Yes, your muscles grow, but what are the limits? Can you imagine?
Then it turns out you can walk afterwards.
Badly. But the fact is, the person did it. You see, the question is, he says, I can't, right? I can't. It's still very far away. I mean, how much we... Distancing from our potential productivity is also a form of progress. You can do it. For instance, there's a principle. 6 to 8 repetitions. I use that kind of training, but is it really right to stop at the 8th if you could have done 9 and 10 with the same focused movements? So you didn't quite finish the set, or maybe you picked the wrong weight, or maybe you weren't warmed up enough. Interestingly, without supervision, people tend to develop faster and are more likely to cheat.
At what age is it okay for kids to start going to the gym? Many parents say, you can't go yet, you won't grow, or don't go, you'll get injured. Well, obviously, doing real bodybuilding at 10 years old is probably a bit early.
Let's go over it again. Bodybuilding, what is it? Building the body. A child begins developing their body at birth. The question is, in what way?
So what happens? He watches a movie and says, I want to be like Schwarzenegger or Alexander Fedorovich. I want to build my biceps. Let him
go to the gym today so he learns what the locker room smells like and starts doing pull-ups correctly.
So you have no restrictions?
I have no restrictions, but the kid does. Dad, when will you take me to your gym? I'll take him, but he can't do everything. He won't be squatting with a barbell. He'll be squatting with his hands behind his head and using the right technique. He will be squatting. So it's okay to start from that basic level. If he squats really well, I'll add some weight to his waist and he'll keep squatting with his legs like that. When a child's body is developing, it's important not to put any axial load on the spine to help it grow. But again, besides thinking that we're causing harm in the gym, we also need to look at the kind of strain a child experiences just from sitting incorrectly.
Can a backpack cause more harm? I agree.
You're absolutely right. It's a double-edged question. For instance, if you lift weights, carrying a backpack gets easier.
Dash, what are the most common health problems, and in general, what issues do athletes face when they finish their professional careers?
Hormonal balance. Well, hormones,
Most of them are on hormone replacement therapy. Well,
I think so, yeah. Again, I think that's your question. So today, you observe the patients who come to you. I think it's just from the wrong overuse of pharmacology. Listen, I'll tell you now, that's probably your question. I've never really gotten into it. I don't try to figure out what's wrong with you or anything like that. You see, I just don't do that.
Nobody complains. Everyone is smart and independent. Usually, it's only after everything ends.
By the way, I want to tell you, I don't like it when people do things on their own, even if they have doctors in their circle. They secretly start messing around without finding out if they're even allowed to do it. That's the biggest problem. I mean, roughly speaking, yeah, there's an increased risk of cancer. Well, that's the thing, Well,
there are people for whom this is contraindicated. For example, if someone with prostate cancer decides at 50 to alter their chemistry, it's contraindicated. That's why you need to get checked. That's it.
But there is also a prerequisite, right? There is a risk. What's the name of the prostate-specific antigen test? Yes, we do the prostate-specific antigen test.
Let's say by elderly residents.
So roughly speaking, if the prostate-specific antigen risk is high, no, you shouldn't. What if he hasn't done the tests?
Well, of course. So
That's how it is. So now what? Such reckless people who do these things later get sick, develop certain illnesses, and then spread negativity to everyone around them, even to those who could basically do these things without any harm. That's what I'm talking about. When we have someone in our circle to consult with, we can be cautious and ask if something is okay. He doesn't ask for advice, but starts doing things. This leads him to bad kinds of independence. Well, especially women, it's the absence of a menstrual cycle, right? That is when a woman resorts to hormonal drugs, her cycle changes, her hormones change, and then it happens again.
The same thing. By the way, I actually had this as one of my questions too. What is your general attitude toward women using pharmacology?
Disgusting. It does happen, but only if a doctor is supervising it and clearly understands what the woman is doing.
And regarding competitive female heavy bodybuilding, no.
I'm completely against it. Absolutely. I don't like it. A woman should be a woman. A woman is a feminine being. That's how it should be. Excuse my language, there. At 25, her cheekbones are prominent, making her look 40, which is excessive.
Sesh, you work with sports nutrition. You have your own sports nutrition company. Tell me, well, it's probably silly to ask which supplements work, obviously the ones you produce, but...
Listen, well, again, how did it all start? It all started back when I had a contract with Pure. As part of Pure, my own product line was supposed to come out. They asked me what I wanted, and I said, let's do it this way. I've done this my whole life. For me, it was protein, BCAAs, creatine, glutamine, something for joints, and zinc and magnesium as supplements. That's about it. And then there was also L-carnitine. I really liked liquid L-carnitine. It was sold in pharmacies, and I really liked it. Yes, L-carnitine. And when I went to my technologist, I said, we need something that's not a pre-workout, but an energy drink. We released guarana with a strong dose. These products became popular for us. As for what I use for myself all my life, that's why these top products remained intentionally. I don't have a gainer. For me today, a gainer, I think it's only needed for soldiers. Today we get enough carbs. You can get good carbs from everyday life, but as for high quality protein with good absorption, yes, we don't get enough of that. That's why protein is essential and amino acids are something you should have.
Did you use or are you using any pharmacy drugs while preparing?
Yes, first, vitamins. I don't include vitamins in my product line, but I sometimes use B1, B6 and B12. The same applies to riboxin and mildronate. I use both. I get a mildronate drip every 6 months. It's a great drug and I like it. So it all depends on how exhausted I am. Or for example, if the tests show that something is needed, then I use it.
And how do you deal with blood thickening?
Listen, rarely. Right now, you caught me thinking about it. Right now, the levels were thick, but first I need to be cautious. Again, what I wanted to say, you said it right on point. When we get test results, everyone reacts immediately. We should review the test dynamics or double check them. Today, for example, my blood density was high, around 53, which is borderline for me. Hematocrit hasn't exceeded the reference value of 49. First, I need to understand why this is happening. Usually, it's just water. I had the test done on Monday. On Saturday, I rode my motorcycle 700 kilometers without drinking water. And on Sunday, I also barely drank any. He also ate watermelon, a diuretic, so his hematocrit level might have already increased before the tests. So this week, I need to drink enough water and see what happens to it. I think it will return to normal. Because the last time I had my blood drawn was when I was preparing, and that's the only time it was elevated. And once every 6 months I have a draw, but that's just a draw. How does it work? They take 500 milliliters of blood, separate the red blood cells from the plasma, and then inject saline solution like that. It wasn't just drained. Retrocyte FRS, yes.
What other injuries do you have besides the well-known one?
My chest was torn and I have a microtrauma. Recently, I strained my quadriceps. A small snap I also consider a microtrauma. I'm recovering and moving on. Then I had a serious injury. I got on skates at the beginning of the year and tore the inner part of my knee, the adductor ligament. So I was out of action for a month, but still, I recovered too. Everything is fine.
Sash, do you have any regrets, like the main one in your life?
That's Mr. Olympia. I went to America repeatedly thinking I'd make it in time. It was a good experience, really. On one hand, I regret it, but on the other hand, it was a good experience. It was supposed to be the top competition, but I showed my worst shape, you could say. I should have taken it more seriously, probably, yeah. In 2005, I should have paid more attention to it.
How long before the tournament did you arrive?
A month before. But again, to get in shape in a month, when you leave a month before, it's tough if you're out of shape. Well, it won't work. Maybe you could have done it back then, but that was 2005. Sasha, that was almost 20 years ago. Well, we weren't as smart as we are today.
Here's a question about chemistry. You don't have to answer. Did you really fly to another country for that? Come on, those who prepare and live there, obviously they find it there. But what about athletes who don't cancel everything before tournaments, just fly in a day or two before, compete, and basically don't need any chemistry there? If you fly to America or another country a month or two early for the first time, you buy it there right away.
I don't know how they buy it now, but back then I had no issues with it. But I played it safe. I had a prescription, meaning a doctor's note saying that I needed it, so I played it safe. It was officially made in 2 languages. If I had been caught, yes, it was in my first aid kit, unpacked. It's not for sale since there's no liability for using it under the article. You see, back then everything was simpler. I don't know about now. But how can there be an article for using it? That's a question for a good lawyer. Because, they do prescribe hormone replacement therapy. Hormone replacement therapy does exist.
A week ago, a friend called me. By the way, do you know him too? A relative was caught either at Sheremetyevo or Domodedovo with opened ampules. I think there was testosterone and an anabolic. He asked if you can prescribe it. I said I don't have a prescription book, so I can't write it now. Secondly, even if I do write it. First, these aren't pharmacy drugs. Where did he buy them and what does my...
Does the prescription matter? Yes, that's the issue. If you take our pharmacy drugs, isn't that a problem? Amnadren, if it's at the pharmacy, then maybe.
Yes, especially anabolic. Where did he get it and how is hormone replacement therapy related? I still think it won't help him. Even if I could do something like that, I would end up in jail too.
Correct. As a doctor, you can only prescribe what is officially sold in pharmacies.
Sasha, what about all this underground chemistry that's being sold now, literally being made in kitchens?
Saneshka, I don't know, but it's a disaster for me. I'm one of those who, when I finished, meaning when all this started, there was one medication, that I was preparing with, and it so happened that other people got it for me. Another person says, try it. I say, I'll try it. I always say, what am I, a tester? I say, give me something that works. He says, I vouch for it. Well, I said, well, they gave it to me, so they gave it to me. And when it happened, I just missed it. I ran out of the same testosterone propionate, so I had to try this one. When I started trying the new one, sorry for my language, but my sexual activity greatly increased in just 2 days. It makes me wonder what I was doing before this. And then you realize when you train, but with the help of supplements, you're actually balancing your physique. Because these are just some micro things, right? Some fine tuning. It's just bodybuilding. What is it? To show the maximum human ability to build muscle mass with a minimal percentage of body fat. So there, you build your form for just a few hours, basically, right? And of course, you achieve all this with the help of pharmacology. Sorry, but each drug must contain only its intended product. But since they want to make money, they'll add something else. And as a tester, you have to deal with it. It's nonsense. That's often how it happens now. When a product is new, it's usually good, but eventually it changes. And when you find yourself in this maze, it's unclear.
Many people say he showed up out of shape, he wasn't prepared, he didn't get in shape. They don't realize the person may have tried even harder and done more. And there's also the factor of, let's say, the same supplements, right? So the same person took everything, took the same stuff, and maybe, for example, the supplements just weren't good quality.
Anything is possible. We've been through that too, unfortunately. That's why one of my reasons for ending my professional career was that basically I just wasn't ready to be a test driver at that level. That also happened. I
have a friend, first of all, and a protégé. You were probably the last person I helped prepare. I had protégés. I worked with Moscow, St. Petersburg, Russia, Arnold Classic, and absolute champions in classic and open bodybuilding and men's physique. I've coached various categories, but never women by principle, and I haven't coached in a long time. Well, for example, Lesha Kuznetsov comes to me and says that someone wrote on social media that he didn't win with me. First of all, we moved to the pro level, that's one. Second, we both understood each other in the sense that we weren't ready. There's a line, that we're not ready to cross because this is a person who has a child, who has a mother. Yes, in what areas can we still, at the expense of pharmacological lawlessness, but at what cost of risk? His life? I'm not ready, he's not either. And many don't understand. We're making progress, let's say, but we're working in such a way that sometimes he asks me something, he thanks me, he consults with someone like Boryusha, and he does everything that depends on him. I can say for sure what the person is doing. But to compete and take risks, for example, I'm probably not the kind of mentor who's ready to make a deal with my conscience and put it on the line, on the scales.
No, well, let me say it again. And we started by saying that argument is a sport, but maybe we should start with longevity. Because a champion who lives very little or then leaves it won't be interesting. Notice how many arguments there are these days. I have a lot of respect for Ronnie Coleman, but can you imagine how much gloating there is now about the fact that
he's falling apart?
But let me tell you this. I saw him back when he was still a police officer, and he was already limping back then, Not sure what would have happened to him if he hadn't worked out.
I consider him great.
Great, 100% great. So there's no schadenfreude here either. But the perspective, you understand, right? We still have to carry it. How do a lot of people feel about bodybuilding? When a bodybuilder dies, people blame steroids. But what do they say when an average person dies?
For example, Joe Linder, a young guy, just died recently. Young guys die too. Everyone does.
They die. But when an athlete dies, everyone suddenly says it's all bad.
At work, when an athlete lands in the hospital, everyone just goes, ah.
Sanechka, let me tell you, my dad ended up in the hospital with cancer between stage 2 and 3. The surgery went well and turned out fine. The nurse who was there asked, is this because of sports supplements?
It's especially funny when people say that at the same time.
Yeah, that's first of all. Second, you realize that what we're talking about now, like protein, it's the same raw material we use to make baby food. Well, basically, people start making choices for society without even understanding the situation itself. How often does this occur in medicine? I'm afraid to even imagine.
Sash, ask two final questions. First, I heard about your biggest disappointment. Now tell me about your greatest achievement.
What are you proud of? I am. I really love the year 2003 when I won the European Championship. And of course, that performance with Ronnie Coleman and Cutler, because at that moment, I really did. I managed to open a window for Russian guys. Yes, because before then, it felt like everyone saw America as one thing and us as something else. It felt unattainable, unreachable. And when I managed to go to the Olympia to qualify, when I appeared twice on the cover of Flex at that time. Well, you understand, right? I'm Russian. I didn't move there. I lived here. They sent the money here. So it all became achievable. I think that's such a big achievement. The European Championship focuses on preparation rather than just winning. When I returned to sports after a year of disqualification, that period was really great. With my routine, everything was precise. I used few supplements, and the results were so impressive that Universal took notice and offered contracts. Standing on stage as the anthem played at the awards ceremony, I had tears streaming down my face because I didn't know what to do next. So that's the moment when the victory itself isn't what's important, but the path to victory is. I tell all the guys about this today. If you gave it your all today, it will be recognized sooner or later. Maybe not with a gold medal, but you will be in demand. How you talk about yourself doesn't matter. What counts is how you're recognized and valued.
What would you advise the guys? Right now, there's a big problem that many guys, they seem to have an internal program making them feel like just part of the crowd, unable to achieve or become anyone. And then there are those who by nature, have this feeling of uniqueness inside, that of being exceptional, and everything is within his power, everything is in his hands. So for the guys who don't think like that and don't strive for it, what would you wish for them in their lives? To change?
First, change the environment you're in. To begin with, first and foremost, change everything. And often it's the environment. Just try to talk to other people, because our environment really demotivates us. If you surround yourself with jerks, you'll become one too. If you're around successful people, they'll lift you up. And the most important thing is to be interesting to them, to strive after them, to reach for them. If you want to train and be somewhere higher, you have to train next to those who are higher. I once had Vishnevsky too, trained at Hercules, and always watched him, waiting for him to arrive. So there was the Ivada club, where the guys trained. I remember there was Lev Lebedev, who went to the World Championship and became 6th among juniors. I set a goal to win the World Championship. And I always had to be around those guys who were lifting there. I watched them, observed them, changed clothes together with them. It's the smell of sweat. You have to experience it. You change your environment. And if I had trained with the neighborhood guys, right, what kind of inner state would I have had? No, if you're not satisfied with your life today, you have to look for the environment you aspire to. That's for sure.